Hey guys, before we start, please don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment if you have any feedback. Let's go to the story. This is a story I've never shared publicly before. Not because I'm afraid people won't believe me, but because most of the time, I don't even believe it myself. It sounds like something out of a bad TV drama, too cruel, too deliberate, too surreal to happen in real life. But it did. And even now, years later, I still carry the weight of that day with me, no matter how far I've come. I was 22 when it happened. I had just graduated college and moved back home for a while to save money. My relationship with my family wasn't exactly warm, but it wasn't openly hostile either. We weren't hugging and baking cookies together, but I didn't think they hated me. At worst, I figured I was just the overlooked one, the kid who didn't need much, so they didn't give much. I have an older sister, Leah, and a younger brother, Kyle. Leah's always been the golden child. She's organized, polished, and always doing what our parents expected. Kyle, on the other hand, was more of the loud, impulsive type, but in that boys will be boys way that everyone excused. I was the in-between. Not rebellious enough to need attention, not exceptional enough to be celebrated. That summer, my parents decided to take a short family trip, a weekend away at a national park a few hours from where we lived. Hiking, scenic views, overpriced lodge breakfast. Nothing fancy, but a chance to spend time together, as my mom put it. I didn't really want to go, but they made it clear it wasn't optional. So I packed my bag, climbed into the back seat of the car, and told myself it would just be a few days. I could survive that. The trip itself was fine, uneventful. A lot of walking, a lot of group photos where I stood slightly off to the side. At one point, I offered to take a picture of the rest of the family, and my mom actually said, "Oh, you're not in this one," as if she hadn't noticed I was even standing there. That kind of thing wasn't new. Still, I pushed through it. It was only a weekend. The day everything happened, we were driving back home. 5 or 6 hours on the road, with the usual passive-aggressive conversations about where to stop for food, which gas stations were too sketchy, and why Kyle wouldn't put down his phone. About halfway home, my dad pulled into one of those generic highway rest stops, gas pumps, vending machines, some picnic tables, and a fast food place with sun-faded posters in the window. I had to use the bathroom, stretch my legs, and grab a drink. No one said anything when I got out of the car. I figured we all needed a break, and I assumed they'd be getting snacks or refueling. It couldn't have been more than 10, maybe 15 minutes. When I came back out, arms full with a soda and a bag of chips, the car was gone. At first, I thought maybe they just moved to another part of the lot. I walked the perimeter, checked around the side of the building, peeked toward the exit lane. Nothing. I stood there for a few seconds, not panicked, not even surprised, just confused. Then I pulled out my phone. No missed calls. I called my mom. It rang twice, then voicemail. I tried my dad. Straight to voicemail. Tried Leah. No answer. Tried Kyle. Nothing. I went through each name again, over and over, holding the phone like it might suddenly buzz with an oops, where are you? Text. But nothing came. That's when it stopped feeling like a mistake. At first, I didn't panic. I told myself there had to be a reasonable explanation. Maybe they were just circling the lot. Maybe they'd pulled around to the other side of the building. Maybe my dad had needed to find a bathroom with shorter lines or a better gas pump. Something. I walked up and down the strip of stores and fast food places, trying not to look too out of place. Holding my phone, scanning for a familiar gray SUV, half expecting it to come rolling around the corner with my mom's irritated voice telling me to hurry up next time. But minutes passed. Then 10. Then 20. Still nothing. I started to feel it then, that slow, crawling anxiety that builds in your chest when you realize something is off, but you haven't let yourself fully believe it yet. I sat on one of the concrete benches near the vending machines, opened my soda, took a sip just to do something with my hands. My mind was running in circles. Maybe they genuinely thought I was in the car? No, that wasn't possible. I'd been sitting in the back. My bag wasn't in the car. I hadn't been quiet or hidden. They knew I got out. So why hadn't anyone called? Texted? Checked to see if I was okay? I kept refreshing my inbox, opening and closing apps, looking at the time. Still nothing. At some point, I went back inside and asked the guy behind the register if he'd seen a gray SUV. He looked at me with a mix of confusion and sympathy. Said, yeah, they pulled out maybe 20 minutes ago. He thought I was with them. I wanted to ask, did they seem in a rush? Did they look panicked? But I didn't. Because deep down, I already knew. This wasn't a mistake. They left. They actually left me. Not metaphorically. Not emotionally. They got in a car, saw that I wasn't in it, and drove away. I stood just outside the convenience store, my soda sweating in my hand, trying to process what that meant. Trying to imagine what kind of family does that. I didn't have a plan. I didn't even have much money, just under $200 in my account and a half-dead phone battery. The nearest city was about 40 miles away. I Googled the closest bus line. There was one. If I could get to a smaller town about 15 minutes away, I could catch a late-night ride back home. There was a shuttle service nearby. I booked it. It ate up most of my balance, but I didn't care. I just needed to move. I needed to not be standing in that parking lot any longer, surrounded by strangers and the echo of my family's silence. The shuttle came. It was an old white van with the logo peeling off the side. The driver didn't ask questions. I sat in the back, pressed against the window, trying to hold it together. By the time I reached the bus terminal, the sun had already set. I bought the cheapest one-way ticket I could. And then I waited. I must have looked like a ghost. I caught my reflection in the glass of the vending machine and barely recognized myself, shoulders hunched, eyes heavy, hair pulled back in a messy knot that had started the day looking cute. The bus finally arrived. I boarded, found a window seat near the back, and pulled my hoodie over my head. I spent that entire ride thinking about what I'd say when I got home. If I should say anything at all. I still hadn't received a single message. Not even one of those passive, "Where are you?" texts you'd send a friend you lost track of at a concert. Just nothing. And somehow, that silence said more than any angry voicemail ever could. It was after midnight when I stepped off the bus. The station was mostly empty. Just a few travelers milling around, either half asleep or dragging their luggage with tired eyes and headphones in. I stood there for a moment, letting the night air settle around me. It was humid, but not hot. One of those strange, still nights where everything feels like it's holding its breath. I didn't call a cab or ask for a ride. I didn't trust anyone to show up. Instead, I pulled my hoodie tighter around me and started walking. It wasn't far, maybe 2 miles to my parents' house, but it felt longer. Every step felt heavier than the last. I kept rehearsing what I'd say when I got there. Would I go straight to my room? Would I demand an explanation? Should I even knock? Or should I just let myself in and act like nothing happened? By the time I reached the house, I was sweating through my shirt. My shoes were damp from the grass along the sidewalks, and my phone battery was hanging on at 2%. The lights were on. The car was in the driveway. Everything looked normal, like a family had come home from a trip, unpacked, and settled in for the night. I stood there, just off the curb, staring at the house that had been mine for years. Something about it felt foreign now. I stepped up to the side door, turned the knob, and walked in. No one had locked it. Of course, they hadn't. I kicked off my shoes and left my bag by the door. My legs were shaking, but I forced myself to keep walking. The TV was on in the living room. All 4 of them were there. My dad was flipping through the channels. My mom was knitting, barely looking up. Leah was scrolling on her phone, and Kyle was half asleep on the couch with a bowl of chips in his lap. And none of them looked the least bit surprised to see me. No one jumped up. No one said, "Oh my God, where were you?" My mom glanced over and said, in the same tone you'd use if someone was late for dinner, "Oh, you made it back." That was it. No apology. No explanation. Just a flat, passive comment, like I'd been out running errands and taken too long. I stood there, staring at them, not sure if I was going to scream or collapse. I said, "You left me." My dad paused the TV and shrugged. "We thought you'd catch up." Catch up? Like I was a stray dog they'd lost at the park. I looked at Leah. She didn't even blink. Just said, "You always take forever. We figured you were being dramatic." Kyle didn't say anything. He just kept eating chips. Something inside me cracked then, but it didn't come out loud. It wasn't a breakdown or a sob. It was quiet. A deep, cold certainty that these people weren't mine. I didn't stay in that room. I turned, walked past the kitchen, and went straight to my bedroom. The same walls. The same bedspread. The same childhood posters I never took down. But it didn't feel like my space anymore. I shut the door, sat on the edge of the bed, and let the silence press in around me. No one knocked. No one came to talk. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there with my arms around my knees, wondering how long I'd been pretending that this family was whole, because the truth was, that day didn't break us. It just finally showed me the cracks that had been there all along. When the sun came up, I was still wide awake. I hadn't moved from the edge of the bed. I didn't sleep, didn't cry, didn't scroll through my phone. I just sat there, staring at the same old bookshelf I'd had since I was 12. Half filled with books I hadn't read in years, trinkets from school, a dusty snow globe from some forgotten vacation. It all felt frozen. Like a museum of a childhood I didn't remember fondly. I could hear the house waking up, doors opening, drawers sliding, someone turning on the faucet in the hallway bathroom. My mom's voice on the phone. My dad grumbled about the news. No one knocked. At some point, I stood up, pulled my duffel bag onto the bed, and started packing. Not everything, just enough. A few outfits, my charger, my wallet, and a folder of important documents I kept stashed in my desk drawer. I moved like I was in a trance. Calm, quiet, certain. When I stepped out into the hallway with my bag slung over my shoulder, I found Leah standing near the bathroom, brushing her hair. She glanced at me, then looked back in the mirror. "You're leaving?" she asked like I was ducking out early from a family brunch. I didn't answer. I didn't owe her one. Downstairs, my mom was in the kitchen pouring herself a cup of coffee. She looked up, saw the bag, and raised an eyebrow. "Where do you think you're going?" she asked. I said, "Anywhere that isn't here." She didn't flinch. Just set the coffee pot down and said, "Don't be dramatic." That word again. Dramatic. They'd weaponized it for years. Anytime I got upset? Dramatic. If I asked why they treated me differently? Dramatic. If I said something hurt? Dramatic. It was their shield. Their way of making sure I never challenged anything. But this time, I didn't bite. I opened the door, stepped outside, and walked down the porch steps without another word. No one followed. No one asked where I'd go or if I was okay. No one tried to stop me. I called a friend on the way to the bus stop. We weren't especially close at the time, but she was the only person I could think of who might not hesitate to say yes. I didn't tell her the full story, just that I needed a place to crash for a little while. She didn't ask questions, just gave me her address and told me to come over. I stayed on her couch for almost a week. She lent me a pillow and a blanket and made a spot in her closet for my bag. We ordered takeout and watched reality TV until our eyes burned. She didn't push me to talk, didn't try to fix anything. She just let me be. And in that space, I realized how rare that was. No guilt tripping. No passive-aggressive jabs. No underhanded comments about how I should be grateful. Just peace. It was the first time in a long time I'd felt it. And I wasn't willing to let it go. My mom sent a single text 2 days later. "I hope you got whatever you needed out of that stunt." I didn't respond. That was the last message I ever got from her. Not because she blocked me, but because I didn't reply. And she never bothered again. The first few weeks were strange. Not chaotic, not painful, just strange. Like learning how to breathe differently. I kept waiting for something to snap me back. A phone call. A voicemail. Even an accidental message meant for someone else. Some little tether to remind me that the past 22 years hadn't just evaporated. But nothing came. No one from my family reached out again. Not to ask if I was okay. Not to demand I come home. Not even to scold me for walking away. The silence was so complete it felt intentional. And for a while, that silence hurt. Not like a sharp pain, more like an ache. A heavy, pressing weight that settled into my ribs and didn't move for days at a time. But then something started to happen. The ache didn't go away, but it got easier to carry. My friend eventually offered me a more permanent arrangement. Her roommate was moving out, and the timing lined up like fate. I took over the lease with whatever money I had left, picked up extra shifts at work, and slowly, piece by piece, I built a new life. It wasn't glamorous. I had a futon for a bed and ate boxed pasta more nights than I'd like to admit. But it was mine. There was no one rifling through my drawers, no one making snide comments at dinner, no one rolling their eyes when I spoke. Just me, living on my terms. For the first time in years, I could breathe without checking to see if someone else was annoyed by the sound. I bought my groceries, cooked my meals, and rearranged my furniture 3 different times until it finally felt like home. And the longer I stayed away, the more I saw the dynamics I used to call normal. How I was always expected to be the flexible one, the one who gave more room, who didn't cause problems, who absorbed discomfort so no one else had to. My family had never made space for me. They expected me to shrink. And when I finally didn't, they left me behind. I got a new phone number a few months later. Not out of spite, but for myself. A clean slate. I didn't tell them. I didn't post about it. I just moved on. I changed my emergency contacts, updated my resume, built a new inner circle, one made of people who chose me, not out of obligation, but because they wanted to. And slowly, without realizing it, I stopped talking about what happened. Not because I was hiding it, but because it didn't define me anymore. I still carried the story, but it didn't control the room. It became a chapter, not the whole book. About a year later, I ran into Leah. It wasn't planned. I was at the grocery store after work, standing in line with a basket of frozen dinners and a bottle of shampoo, when I heard someone behind me say my name. Not a question, not surprised, just my name. I turned around, and there she was, standing 3 feet away in a slightly wrinkled blazer and holding a tote bag that looked too clean to have ever actually been used. For a moment, neither of us said anything. I wasn't even angry, just caught off guard. Like running into an old classmate you never liked, but still know too well. She gave me a small, unreadable smile. Didn't expect to see you here. I nodded. Yes, same. We stood in awkward silence for a few seconds. The line moved forward. I stepped ahead. She stayed behind me, and when I thought maybe that would be it, she added, "You look good. Different." I didn't respond to that. I didn't know what it meant. I paid for my stuff, grabbed my bag, and was halfway to the exit when she caught up again. "Can I ask you something?" she said. I stopped but didn't turn around. "Do you really think we did it on purpose?" Her voice wasn't hostile. She sounded tired, maybe even sad. I turned just enough to see her face. "You tell me." She didn't answer right away, just looked at the floor, then back at me. "I didn't think you'd leave." That sentence sat between us like a dropped weight. I said, "And I didn't think you'd let them." We stood there for a moment longer, and I could tell she was waiting for me to say more, to offer some olive branch, to acknowledge some unspoken grief. But I didn't, because the truth was, I didn't miss them anymore. Not in the way I thought I would. I missed what I thought we were. But that version of us had never really existed. They hadn't abandoned me at that rest stop because they were forgetful. They'd abandoned me long before that. Every time they made it clear I was the one who had to bend, to compromise, to absorb the consequences of their choices. And when I finally chose myself, they decided I didn't belong. I'd just made it official by leaving. Leah didn't apologize. I think maybe she wanted to, but couldn't bring herself to do it. Or maybe she didn't think there was anything to apologize for. We stood there, 2 adults who had shared a house, a childhood, and 1,000 small moments that never added up to anything safe. And then I said, "Take care of yourself," and walked away. I didn't look back, not out of pride, but because I was done searching their faces for remorse. They had their chances. Now I had mine. Sometimes people ask what finally pushed me to cut contact with my family. They always expect a dramatic answer. A screaming match. A betrayal with sharp edges. Something big enough to justify the silence that followed. But it wasn't like that. It wasn't loud. It wasn't chaotic. It wasn't even that surprising. It was quiet. Deliberate. I was left behind. And when I came back, they acted like I was the one who disappeared. No apologies. No explanations. No hint that they saw what they'd done. It was the kind of moment that doesn't need interpretation. It just is. A line drawn in permanent marker. You see it. You step over it. And you don't go back. Since then, I've rebuilt everything from the ground up. Not perfectly. Not fast. But intentionally. I got promoted at work. Rented a better place. Made friends who showed up when they said they would. I started going to therapy, one of the scariest but most important decisions I've ever made. I spent years unlearning the idea that love has to be earned by being small, by being quiet, by never asking for too much. It took time. It still does. But I know now that the absence of mistreatment isn't love. And loyalty shouldn't require you to abandon yourself. I don't celebrate holidays the way I used to. I don't go back home. I don't send cards. I don't leave my number floating in old inboxes hoping someone will stumble across it and feel something. It's not out of bitterness. It's just peace. I still think about that rest stop sometimes. Not in a traumatic flashback kind of way, but in the way you think about a place where your life changed course. Where you learned something about the people around you, and even more about yourself. That gas station in the middle of nowhere taught me more than 20 years of family dinners ever did. It taught me that sometimes people don't love you the way you need. Sometimes they don't love you at all. They love the idea of you. The version that stays small. The one that fits quietly into the mold they made. But not the real you. Not the version that draws a line and doesn't flinch when they try to cross it. And if that version of you doesn't fit their picture, they'll leave. Or worse, they'll let you be the one who walks away. And then they'll act like you never existed. But here's the part they didn't expect. I didn't disappear. I started over.